Guys, we're live because you're watching. But we're back in Studio B, which is so exciting. I am really happy to be back in our original space. Just bringing up the live here so I can make sure we're all good. Okay. Yeah, back in our space, back in our studio. And I think you can see behind me, which would mean that you can see that beautiful Nord, which technically belongs to Brett. So Brett's who taught the gospel courses for us, and he is letting us use his beautiful Nord for a photo shoot tomorrow. It's really beautiful. And Roland was here yesterday, and they brought pianos. Oh, I'm obsessed, which I will be teaching on. Hopefully we'll be able to swap this one out for some of the lessons so you can kind of see. It's an LX, so it's an electric piano, but it's an upright. So it looks just like an acoustic, and it is unbelievable to play. And they brought their stage piano, the RD 2000, I think it's called. Anyways, they brought some real treats. Anyways, there's some really good questions today, so I'm just gonna jump right into them. So nice to see you guys all here. Here we go. Okay, first question from Rack Beats. So how to play Cheshire Cat's Hands Together. So the struggle here being that just getting used to the piano and the geography of the keyboard, and struggling from looking at the page and then knowing where the hands are. So still learning the layout of the keyboard, so having a hard time looking at the page and then the hands and getting lost. So any suggestions for this? So I'm actually going to head to Cheshire Cat here, and I'm going to demonstrate some ideas for this because I feel like this is a really common issue for beginners, because I'm just putting the link if you guys want to access the sheet music to follow along. It's a really common issue for beginners because it's true, you're trying to get familiar with the layout of the keyboard and you're supposed to look at your music, but then you kind of need to check that your hands are in the right place. So it gets really tricky. So the first tip is, of course, to practice them hands separately. Now, this was a struggle for me for a lot of years, and actually what I ended up doing for most of my songs was memorizing the left hand. So I didn't have to think about it, and then I would kind of read the right hand. That said, there's a lot of moving in this song. So while this measure might not require you to have to move your hands, for the next measure you have to go here, and then you have to come back down, and there's more moving. So one of the ways that I like to practice this is by just moving the positions without playing all the notes. So for example, in measure 1, we have an A minor 4-note chord or a 1-octave arpeggio. So I'm just going to place my 5-finger here. And then the next measure, I have to go to C. So I'm going to start to memorize that distance, that feeling of moving from this position to C. And without looking at my hands, I know that there's a space of 1 note between the two. So if I can kind of look, study it, go, okay, I'm going from here to here, I can look away and make that negotiation. So do the same thing for the next measure, back to the A. Okay, well, that's where I came from, so there it is. The next measure, I have to set up with my 5 on F. So where's F? Okay, I'm gonna step down, So again, it's that same distance. So what ends up happening is you practice those movements for the left hand, looking and then not looking, so you can begin to memorize that and build muscle memory. Cassie had a great suggestion for this one, which was playing these chords in block form so that you're not having to think about each individual note right away. But if you set up the shape and then you look, okay, I got these notes, and then we're here. Oh, I played that wrong. And then here. So instead of having to worry about where each of those notes is placed, you set up the shape, you play them all at once, and you hold them. And that's kind of a great step too. So you've gotten used to those beginning positions, moving your hand around. Now you can get used to playing and holding them. And then from there, once you get comfortable with that, you can come back to this. Because your hand will be used to this, so playing them one at a time now is no problem. and then you shift, and you know the shape is here. I know the next shape, again, that 5 fingers traveling down by third, and then there. So that's how I would suggest working on just getting comfortable with the keyboard geography and then also playing the song. This is not an uncommon struggle. I think we all have a struggle with this at the beginning, especially because this keyboard is brand new and you're being expected to do a lot of moving around. So that's why in the beginning stages, the very first lessons with those, 5-finger scales, they feel really simple, but the purpose of them is largely to get you comfortable moving around the piano. And we're really intentional about that in the foundations because a lot of the songs and the music requires you to move your hand position a lot. So you don't get too comfortable just here. So you have to get used to moving around and that layout of the piano. Okay. All right. So I think I hope that will help. And then next up we have a question from Sarab. Maybe I said that wrong, but the question is, would it be possible to recommend 3 or 4 pieces from your list to learn at the end of each level, appropriate to the level? Yes, so first of all, each level in the foundations already has a song that's designed specifically to incorporate all of the concepts within that particular level. So in order to put kind of a list together of songs that would go together with certain levels of the foundations, it's really difficult because the way we present the songs, we use lead sheets, which means that oftentimes there's a simple version that you can play where you're just matching the chords and moving around. And then if you're a little bit more advanced, you could practice playing the melody. So depending on how you approach the song will really determine the level or the difficulty. So that's why we haven't classified them that way. That said, you can see sort of the level of difficulty of the song in the song listing. It'll give it a level or a rating. And if you want suggestions, I'll be happy to do that. So I'll probably end up going back into my inbox where your question was and giving you a few suggestions based on what level you're currently working on. So let me know what level you're on in the foundations and I can give you some suggestions. But generally speaking, like the Scientist, hold on. There's some good ones for songs. The Scientist is a good one for beginners. Amazing Grace, all of the hymns are really good for beginners. Perfect by Ed Sheeran is a good one. And Hallelujah is a good one for, you probably want to be getting close to level 2 of the foundations for that one. And same with Let It Be. It's a pretty good, foundations 1 or 2 match. So yeah, there's some ideas for you. Okay. Salvador, I want to go out of my comfort zone and improve my chording doing something more difficult than triads. How do I start? Can I go directly to foundations, sevenths, chords, and the blues, or is it better to use some quick tips and basic practice? Salvador, you can absolutely move on to the last 2 levels of foundations if you're wanting to explore some of the more complicated chords. Pardon me. That's a great idea. I feel like you've been in this long enough. You know how to practice. You're doing the work. So skip ahead and try out some of those chords. They are so good to get started on as soon as you feel, up for the challenge because, triads are one thing, but you add another note into the mix, and your inversion practice really changes. So go for it. Absolutely. Just check in the chat. Good question, Jerry. I will absolutely recommend some songs once I get through the list here. So if any of you have questions, feel free to type them into the chat as I go. I'll get all of the ones that were pre-submitted, and then I'll kind of loop back around and answer anything that's shown up in the chat. Okay. Vicky, could you please go over one of the tricks from the 500 songs pack? It's the little finger trill where you add flair to the sus2 chord. You just need to see it slowed down. Absolutely. I actually just filmed a quick tip on this little trick that slows it down quite a bit. So that will be coming out in the members area soon. But essentially all I'm doing is I'm playing 1, 2, 5, and then I'm swapping this 2 note for the 3. So in slow motion, that's what's happening. 2 to 3. And it looks so simple, but it actually takes quite a bit of effort to develop the coordination to do that. And once you get comfortable there, you'll speed it up, and eventually that happens. So that's the motion. So if you want to practice it in a more isolated way, move from 2 to 3 as quickly as you can. Sounds kind of nasty on its own, but when you play it together, think about gluing your thumb and your 5-finger down. So these are kind of holding everything together. They're the bread of the sandwich. And then these guys do their work. So there's this step, and then you put it all together. And then you can walk back down like that. You can even do this little trill without the root note. There are a lot of different ways that you can execute that. You just get to play around with it and find what feels best for you. And probably the more you do it, the more you'll feel like experimenting. So that should be helpful. I hope. All right. From Sue. Have you any tips to improve my speed? I'm good at slow speed, but when I try to go faster, my left and right hands don't seem to coordinate. Well, yes, I do. And my advice is to just keep practicing slow. But I do have a little bit more advice than that, don't worry. So for me, usually what happens when I try to build speed is my left hand lags a little bit. So in something like, let's do a scale. That wasn't too bad. But if I want to play faster, let's see if I can set myself up to fail here. Okay, that wasn't. I've been practicing. But if I were tripping up there, there we go. The left hand was a little bit behind. So I will slow down and I'll play with adding a different amount of pressure in each hand. So I'm gonna play loud with my left. I'm gonna focus on sinking into the keys a little bit more with my left hand than I am with my right hand. Because what that does is it puts a little bit more intention into the left hand. So now when I go to speed it up, things just seem to kind of cooperate a little bit better. The other thing for developing speed, especially if your hands seem to be not coordinating, is to figure out the weak points, and that would be where fingering changes. So in a scale, there's a tuck here, so that's going to be a weak point, and then a fly over here where you have to kind of negotiate with that thumb. So practice. Cassie is a great lesson on this in our, I think it's a dexterity lesson in the quick tips, where she just practices working up the scale like that. But it's a really, really great way to do it. If you're not practicing something that's like a scale, maybe just 5 notes, same logic applies. Start slow. Figure out where the problem is happening. For me, like I said earlier, it's usually my left, so I'll apply a little bit more pressure in my left hand, and it really helps for some reason. And then if you want to kind of flip that around, try more pressure in the right. Just building more new pathways to make you extra awesome. But the main thing with speed is you have to start slow. And you can just it's a patience game. I recently, I think I've talked about here before, was working on this little speed riff. And the first, just even figuring out which notes to play, it was painful. I was playing it like this. And then I'd think about it, and then, it was awful. But I made myself stick with it, and after about 2 weeks, I was able to play it like this. And then a little bit longer, and I'm able to play it quite quickly. Because my fingers figured it out, but it did not happen overnight. And I've been playing the piano for a bazillion years. So start slow, it actually works. It's really good advice. All right. Thank you very much. I'm gonna say it right. Fei, did I get it? Yes? for the lesson suggestion to Cassie, because yes, upping your technique game is great. So if you're wanting to develop speed, if you're struggling with coordinating the hands, that is a fabulous lesson to be looking at for you. Okay. Is there a time limit on having access to the lessons? No. If you're a member, you have access to the lessons. So for the packs, you have access to the packs. As long as you're a Pianote member, you have access to all of the lessons. So it's pretty sweet. They're not going anywhere. We love our members. Can you recommend a couple of blues songs suitable for beginners? I don't know a lot of blues songs. Okay, hold on. Ain't No Sunshine, which is a great one because there's only 3 chords. Brett's coming in to film Ain't No Sunshine next week, so that should be good. He's also coming in to do Summertime. I think that's kind of bluesy. It's a little more jazzy than bluesy. In Foundations, we have a blues level, which has some blues. The thing with blues is like you learn kind of the 12-bar blues basics, and you can improvise in every blues song. I hesitate to say this. It sounds very similar because it follows that 1-4-5 progression. So in the Foundations, in the blues level, you're going to learn all those foundational pieces. You'll learn how to play that progression. You'll learn the blues scale, which is the pentatonic, minor pentatonic scale. You're going to learn some exercises to help coordinate the hands to play the blues. So I think that is, pardon me, sorry, not enough coffee. I think that's probably your best bet to get started. We're going to be adding so many more songs to our song library that, hopefully we'll cover blues. Like I feel like Hit the Road Jack would be really fun to have in there. But it's just going to take a little bit of time as we build that. So maybe start with Ain't No Sunshine because it's slow and it's chill. The chord chart should be in the 500 songs pack. If it isn't, let me know and I'll make one for you. Okay. I think I'm going to check my emails, make sure I didn't miss anybody. Okay, we also had a friend, CD. Oh, Cliff! Cliff sent me a little image of a song he was working on, and just so you know what was happening, the treble clef had a quarter note, like 3 quarter notes, so we're in 3/4 time, so imagine this. We're in 3/4 time, and we have a C, a D, and an E notated in the treble, and then the left hand has middle C, but it's a dotted half note, which equals 3 beats. So the question was, what the heck? Why are we having 2 of the same note? One of them's a quarter and one of them's a dotted half note. To play that, you would do this. And the reason for this positioning is usually that they're wanting you to have a hand position that will be super efficient for the notes that are coming up. So by having one of your left hand in place, you have access to these notes really easily. So probably you're going to be needing to play these, which is why they have the 1 here. And you're probably going to be just in this area, especially for beginner songs, for your right hand. So that's why they're sharing. So technically, you don't have to play both thumbs. You could just kind of realize, all right, this is happening together, and play it that way. That would be correct. So just a little tidbit for you there, Cliff. I know that's not the most correct way of notating something, but it happens, especially in a little bit more beginner sight reading content. So you did good. Okay, we've got one here from Philippe about lesson 3 on packs, adding style and flair. Hey Soul Sister was amazing, but it's hard for me to find the correct time between the left hand beat and the right hand. How to make it easy since we are only using the chart? Okay, Philippe, you are not alone. I'm just going into actually I'll access the chart here. You're not alone. Rhythms are really tricky. You have to know the song pretty well to play it from a chart. So that's kind of the first thing, is in order to play a song from a chart, you have to really know it pretty well. So I'm assuming that's the rhythm I played it in the lessons pack. So you want to start your song, if you're a beginner, really simple. So you could do this. Your lipstick stains on the front lobe of my left side brains. Now, how did I know where to place those? I could hear it in my head. So if you're struggling to match that up, try playing along with the original track with the artist, because that should help you know when the changes are. And as just a general ear training skill, when you're listening to music, any kind of music, pay attention to when you can hear those chord changes in the song, because if you can start to train your ear to listen for those things, it's going to really help you at the piano. The rhythm, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 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 we've got 4/4 time. So we're working with 4 quarter notes and kind of like that's the natural feeling of the song. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4 1 2 3 4. So if you can establish that, then it's just a matter of figuring out where you want to play your chords in your left-hand notes. And this song has a sort of skippy feeling to it, which is why that back and forth works really well. So if you add an and, it helps you to find the space in between the main beats where you can play some of this. So 1 and 2 and every time I slow down to count and play, it's a disaster. Hold on one second. 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 2 3 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 2 and 3 and 4. So this is happening on the 1 and then the next, the 2's and, I believe. It's not very helpful. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. So 3's and, but that's happening on, right, T? I think so. It's the 3's and. 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and, yeah. 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. And there's a few different ways that you could kind of put that together, but that's how I do it. I hope, I'm just checking in on the chat, I hope that makes sense. Yes, 1 and that's kind of how to set that one up. And just so you know, like when I first started to kind of experiment with different rhythms, that took me a really long time to get. So I'm gonna put that in the back of my mind, because if I were able to slow it down a little bit and have a few passes at it, we could probably film a quick tip that showed some of the rhythms on the bottom and the timing counted out, so you could actually see where those changes are happening. And I think that would be really helpful, because that's a bit of a rhythm scheme that you can use in more than one song, right? It could be really useful. So let me work on that for you. It's in the thought bank. Okay, one moment. Very much focus on for Hey Soul Sister. Yes, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and. There you go. So if you count 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and, that'll take you there. All right, Feifei, I have a question about fingering when playing broken chords. I tend to use 1, 2, 4 when playing the second inversion. Is that okay? But then I usually mess up with the fingering. Inversion fingering, seriously, it took me a bazillion years, so long before I really got a handle on it. So root position, first inversion, and you're saying you go 1, 2, 4 for second inversion. I would not recommend that if possible. You want to try to keep it traditional 1, 3, 5, 1, 2, 5, 1, 3, 5, and 1, 3, 5. And that will provide you with the most efficient way to play through the chords so that you can develop some real speed, and it'll be the least straining on your hand and your wrist. So how I remember this is that root position is always 1, 3, 5. The 1, 2, 4 works really well here because the 1, 2, 4. The 1, 2, 5 works really well because you, in every inversion, are always going to use your 5 finger. If you had your 3 here, it's just awkward. Look how my 3rd finger is kind of like, has to do unnatural bending. This feels so much better because we've got this 3rd here, so these fingers are close, and this is where the big space is. And that's why we have this more of a gap between our fingers there. And then when we invert again, this feels great. We can make this a wide shape, and this is, you can't really stretch that very far, so this works really well. And then we end up back in root position. And with the left hand, it's kind of mirrored, so this is not going to feel nice. We don't want to use our 4 because you're going to always use your 4 then, and it's too close together, right? You don't want to be moving from your 4 to your 5. That's really actually going to slow you down. So 5, 3, 1, and then here's our small space and our big space, 5, 2, 1, and 5, 3, 1. So you really, really want to practice that until it feels natural. And like I said, it took me a really long time, and it took me really slowing down and thinking about, okay, why on earth is the fingering set up this way? What fingers am I using in what shape? And then spending time with that. Cliff, you are not out to lunch. That was crazy notation. I sing in a choir. This is from Feifei as well. And I want to be able to play all the voices while practicing. I have a hymn book with SATS voices. Any tips on how to play all voices at once? Well, I haven't seen a piece of choral music in a very long time, but you kind of have to that would be really hard if they're spaced out. If they're written in a traditional hymn format where the voices are just shown as chords, really, it's just harmonies, right? So what ends up happening is you're just playing chords, essentially. But when the score is split up like that, to play all the voices at once can be really hard because you have to read notation that's really kind of spread out, and sometimes they're doing different things. So aside from just literally figuring out each note one at a time and probably voicing them between the hands, the lower voices in the left and the higher voices in the right, you're gonna have, this can be slow work. Another thing you could do maybe is figure out all the notes. If your voicing is B, E, G, you could figure out that's an E minor chord, and you could kind of chord it, but I don't think that's gonna be accurate enough for you. Left hand rhythms. Okay, yes. First inversion, Feifei. You're almost there, just use the 5 on the C. Look at the angling of my hand when I use 4, look at the angling when I'm on my 5. This causes a bit more of a curve here, and it's a little bit unnatural. This feels much better. And yes, left hand rhythms is a really good idea. I need to make that for you guys. I'll get on that, okay? I think, I'm just gonna check my inbox. I think that's all of the questions. Yeah, it is. Okay. How's that going, guys? Are you feeling good about all these answers so far? Let me know. Yeah, that's it. That's all we got. So thanks for coming and hanging out. I love our live lessons, Q&As. So we're back to our Thursday time, 2 o'clock PDT. Should be there consistently for the rest of the summer. So Vicky, how do you figure out the basic chords from a pop song, for instance, Soul Sister? How did I figure that out? The 500 Songs in 5 Days pack will pretty much teach you everything you need to know. And then we've got a quick tip on the the 1654, the 1546 progression. I'll find it. And that really, all pop songs use the 1, the 5, the 6, and the 4. Basically, every single one ever made. So if you can figure out those chords and play around until you figure out the order, you'll be able to play any pop song. I used a chord chart from the 500 Songs pack, and that's how I knew what chords to play. But the 500 Songs pack is really good because it'll teach you how that chord progression works, how the number system works using that 1-5-6-4, and then it'll teach you how to read a chart. So when you do encounter a song that doesn't follow those rules exactly, or maybe there's some different chords in the mix, you know exactly how to manage them. So I highly recommend that you check that out. It will help a lot. All right, guys, thanks for hanging out. We'll be here again next week. Jesus, I'll watch those videos in your Q&A post, and I'll try to come up with some ideas for you. Have a great week.